Have you ever seen a black projects aircraft, /x/? Yeah. I was really into the whole alien syop near 2019, and one day I saw a ship that was nothing like any other plane. The moment I saw it I was like yup, military tech, and stopped believing in aliens LMAO. I saw a small triangle-shaped drone flying past me while I was sitting on the roof. I could hear the whooshing noise of the propellers. In 2004 I saw a YF-23 in flight. That's about the closest I've ever come aside from a UFO that I saw once that might have been a piece of trash. Depending how many lights you see on Z triangular craft, that's how many diglocks it has driving its magneto-electric levitation and propulsion. I saw one of the black triangle ships. It's not aliens, it was near a military base and we have patents for them. I wonder if it's the same thing as diglock. Think you see something and find out it's a old perverted man. That's something an ILMAO would say. Yeah. Preceding it I saw a more standard UFO, then a few hours later it appeared. Everyone who saw the Phoenix lights saw one. But, what if that military tech was reverse engineered? You're claiming to know by seeing exactly one craft, a little arrogant don't ya think? One time some sort of military plane went around NYC and it wasn't supposed to, saw it and we were all like WTF, was that way too big plane? It was like gray and like 3 times a jumbo jet, or looked like it. The news later was like whoops, that was a military craft. I know, not a UFO, but it was fucking weird the way it was flying. Yeah, because the fact there are high-tech military aircraft means there's no such thing as aliens. Retard. Multiple. Lockheed CL-1203. VZ-9 Avracar. Hiller VZ-1 Pawnee. Yes. I literally saw the giant boomerang ship in the pic you posted. Flew right over me in 2011. Southern US, clear weather with some slight clouds. It was night out, perhaps between 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. Happened in the fall, so the weather was near perfect. I got a really good look at it. I saw what I think was a prototype of the X-35 space plane at night in 2005. About 5 years before it was officially acknowledged to exist. It was probably a test flight. When it re-entered the atmosphere it looked like a match just after it struck. It was bright and flaming. That died down and over the space of about 2 or 3 minutes it was right over my head. The wingtips and the nose were still glowing bright orange from the heat. I didn't actually see the ship itself. Only the glow from the hot surfaces. It looked like the pickerel. At the time I drew the imaginary lines and concluded it was the space shuttle. It was up at the time. I think on its second last mission. I thought to myself, they must have really had trouble this time if they brought it down over the Metro Detroit area. I figured I'd see it on the news the next day. Nothing. A few years ago I traced its rough path over ground to see where it might have landed. I think it was a small airport in Michigan named Tecumseh Metal Products Airport. When it flew over my head it was no higher than 500 feet. If it was a glider, and I think it was, there's no way it got any further than that small rural airport. Why would the wings be that big? Turning it would be a nightmare. Good question, but as someone who saw it in person I can assure you the optic is pretty close on scale. It is massive. Yes. It was a giant V shape. But it was cloaked and yet I could just barely make out the outline. Seattle, just north of South Lake Union area where the water starts around summer 2013. I was like, holy shit, do you see that? To my GF who got super upset at me for talking about things that make her uncomfortable. My girlfriend also got upset when I mentioned it to her as it flew overhead. I've heard rumors that they have the ability to manipulate people's thought processes when nearby. Apparently it doesn't work on everyone and some people spurg out afterwards because of others' lack of reaction. Just rumors of course, but I've heard this from roughly 10 different UFO experiencers over the last decade, that they felt influenced when it was near. I once saw a B-2 stealth bomber just flying above the woods around my house, not sure if that counts. I've also seen lots of black helicopters and orb-like UFOs/craft with blinking lights. My mom and dad saw one of those during the Michigan swamp gas sighting in 1966. It was on the first day just after nightfall. They said it had lights hanging under the ship. As it got close to them, the lights dropped off and drifted to the ground. My dad went back the next day with a friend of his to look for the lights that fell. They walked all around the cornfield it was over when it happened. They never found anything. 'Cause they're not wings in the conventional sense. The shape was chosen more for its general overall platform for observation in a range of environments. Minus the runway gear, which is literally just to back it into and out of the hangar, all movement of the good old Northrop Grumman TL-6 Telos is gravity manipulation. Can stay anywhere, completely underrated for hours or maybe days at a time, completely unloaded by the environment, weather, etc. A mobile base you can put anywhere in an instant. What a sexy beast she is. Was the ship silent? The one my mom and dad saw was. Though my mother said she might have detected a very faint hum coming from it. It flew right over their heads about 500 feet. They were able to make out the shape from moonlight, but never saw much more than just the general triangular shape. I'm the other Anon who saw it, not the one you replied to, but I saw the same thing he did and apparently your parents did. It was completely silent and also passed directly overhead at between 500–1000 feet. It had 7 or 9 lights underneath, which I took to be running lights. Nothing fell from the ship that I saw. I was riding on the interstate, so I can't say I heard it. Did see the outline of circles on the underside to the V. Like each. First time I've heard a name put to it, but yep, that's her all right. I guess that makes the TR-3B and Aurora real too. I definitely questioned what I saw. Was mad my GF wouldn't even try to see what I was talking about. I remember thinking to myself, I wonder if they were testing the cloaking out by being so bold about where it was appearing. I had the same thought. They must be testing visibility and stealth by flying it low over hugely populated areas. 200,000 plus people could have easily seen it the night I did if they had looked up. I saw a space shuttle after re-entry and shortly before landing in December of 1999. It looked exactly as you described. The nose and wing tips were glowing orange. It was hauling ass compared to an airliner. It was south of my location over the Gulf of Mexico around 6 p.m. It was a real treat for me. I live somewhere so unimportant the eyes and blue beamers don't bother to fuck with us. I once saw a triangle flying below my plane on my way to Ixtapa, MX. It suddenly stood still and then got left behind. I got some footage, but the window was so dirty it's absolute rubbish. I think most UAP may be black project military technology, and the whole alien thing may be a psyop to get us all into new lockdowns or some shit if we allow it to happen. Hell, one of those things could have obliterated that Malaysian plane. Not to dox myself, but the last one's on display at the Stephen F. Udvar-Hazy Center. I'm an avid aerospace fan who likes to read declassified docs from the Library of Congress. If Northrop won the out over the Boeing in WW2, Chrome Dome could have actually been successful. If you want a free rabbit hole, start with Broken Arrow incidents. There's a reason why agents are always found scrubbing the scene of a crash site with hazmat suits and Geiger counters only to haul up parts of a reflective craft. My dad had a tough time dealing with the one he saw in 1966 for nearly his entire life. My mother was greatly interested and went on to read UFO books, blah, blah, blah. My dad went through times where he claimed he didn't believe in UFO and that it was all bullshit. Even though he saw one with his own 2 eyes. He just couldn't make his neat, tidy little reality work anymore, with this thing he couldn't explain sitting smack in the middle of it. It's only in the past 6 or 8 years he's finally come to terms with it. I never even got the full story out of them until about 5 years ago. My mom would mention it on occasion when I was a kid. But a cold stare from my dad meant that was the end of it. I always thought big deal, they saw some light in the sky. I never had any idea it was a real genuine up-close experience. The only thing that bothers me is that the X-35 has pointed wing tips. The wings on the one I saw gave me the impression they were clipped. It might have been an earlier prototype version, and later on they decided to go with the pointed wingtip design. Or it's another version altogether. Anyway, I know they did do some night launches and landings with the shuttle. I always wondered if it looked like that on landing. You're the first guy I've talked to that actually saw it at night. But why force them to merge in the first place when their competition never had to? I believe a major reason why was the state of the war. At the time of its creation, the Flying Wind was designed to make 2 transatlantic crossings on one tank in the case Europe was completely captured. For its time, the design was, and arguably still is, one of the most efficient plane designs out there. The issue was maneuverability and durability. By the time the wing hit the coast of Europe, its wings would be filled with fuel. With the increased size, that's a great target for AA guns. Due to its revolutionary design, there were a lot of concerns over stability and speed. While it did pass the mandatory limit, it lost to the more fuel-hungry B-17. My best guess is top brass had planned for Britain to fall and shook hands with Northrop only to kick him in the nuts when they found out how well the Channel insulated the British Isles. Better to go with maneuverability and speed at close range. I guess it was an hour or so after dark on the first night, and my mom and dad were out cruising down by the Detroit River. They had already heard some early reports of UFOs being sighted all over the Detroit/Windsor area on both sides of the border. They first saw it about 2 or 3 miles away, floating in the sky inland off the river with all the lights on. They decided to drive over to it. Took a couple of country roads over. It was just outside of River Canard on the Canadian side. They drove right up to it essentially and parked maybe 500 years away at the side of the road, and my dad shut the engine off. They watched it slowly floating in the sky right at them. As it got pretty close, 100 yards away maybe, the lights started to fall off the ship. My dad described them as hanging underneath, almost separate from it. As they fell, they burned out, or went off, or whatever, maybe halfway to the ground. It then floated right over their heads at what they describe as about the height of the Ambassador Bridge towers. They're about 500 feet tall. It made no sound, and they watched it until it got too far away to see any more. I never asked them and they never said, but I don't think they made any attempt to chase it or anything. My mother was excited. She told me she wanted them to take her with them. Which I don't think is a good idea, but whatever. As I mentioned, my dad went back the next day to look for the lights with a friend of his. They never found anything. That night when they got home, they called CKLW, the radio station, and told the news guy what they saw. They were actually interviewed, and the interview was played at the next news break. They basically never talked about it. My mom would have, but my dad had no interest in it. I bet it was 10 or 12 years ago I had a discussion with my dad about the possibility of aliens being demons. Totally unrelated to what they saw that night. I just mentioned the theory. I think that was what allowed him to construct a reality he could believe in. The Bible didn't mention UFOs, and he's a Christian, so he could not believe in them. It's not true, but that's what most Christians think. But call them demons, and that's something that might fit his paradigm. I think that was the beginning of him coming to terms with it. I showed them both a video from a UFO over Brazil a few years ago found on YouTube that had lights falling from it. Falling lights is a thing. There are UFO sightings where that happens. My mom didn't say much, but my dad seemed to think it was very similar to what they saw that night. I tried to find it, but I don't know where it is if it's still up. I believe you saw a C5 Galaxy. It's a very large and impressive aircraft. They are very maintenance heavy and are known to make unexpected stops for odd repairs. I've never seen any of the black triangle aircraft and I'm okay with that. I have seen fully armed Air Force Predator drones at night and that was spooky enough. I wouldn't doubt the triangle craft are real. The Rendlesham Forest incident was just a black ops craft crash landing and the security forces getting taken for a lulzy ride by glowies. My question is, where's the tech from? Obviously general osmosis that has filtered out is that this is not native technology to the US government, they got it from somewhere else around the turn of the last century. But who, or what? Is it the Nazis? Is this the long tail of Operation Paperclip? Is it literally recovered UFO tech? Have we reverse engineered alien technology? There's a spookier proposition as well. Recall that the first UFO wave was kicked off by the Babylon working witch L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons did in 1946. This was literally a cult practice. It was only after that that the aliens and the UFOs started to show up around the world. So if UFOs are inexorably tied to the occult, is it possible that the aliens are demons theory is correct? And if so, could the tech behind Black Project's aircraft be demonic in nature? Are the US advanced aircraft fueled by the power of hell itself? Something to think about. The company that has held and worked on an egg-shaped UFO is called EG&G, formed in 1947. They haven't been able to crack it for 76 years. You can't make this shit up.
Want to share your paranormal experiences? Do you have questions, complaints, ideas for a show topic or a hate-filled rant? Send all your messages to our email for live reading on our show. Email us at atomicshamensweatlodge@protonmail.com.
You're a smart fellow.
Saturdays for the boys. You can watch movies with the Tribe on Depleted Uranium Drive-In Theatre Saturday afternoons at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, only on Twitch TV.
Like, share and subscribe to the channel, and be sure to ring the notification bell. You can follow us on Twitter at Motel and RV Park. Catch the live streams on Rumble. Listen to text-to-speech stories on Atomic Shaman TTS on YouTube.